People have asked how this book came to be, and I was thinking about it, and I realized that it initially started in Africa. My husband and I lived in California at the time. This was about 11 years ago. And he's been in cancer research now for 40 years. And so one of his trips was to the Ivory Coast, and I was going to go with him. So we flew to the Ivory Coast, and on the way we were discussing some of the things that were happening in our lives, and we realized that we were going to be changing locations. And we were thinking of moving to Atlanta, Georgia, which seemed like a huge decision for us at that time. And I was thinking of all these things in my mind as we were flying over there and trying to comprehend what was getting ready to happen to us. And so after we were in the Ivory Coast for a while, we had a bus trip to the interior to go to one of his meetings. And so we got on the bus and we started up, and I got deathly ill. And so I was laying down there on the seat, on the vinyl seat, and just trying to get to wherever we were going and to survive. And so as I was laying there, all of a sudden, I heard these two friends of ours, two doctors from Emory, to the hospital that John was going to be going to in Atlanta. And I heard them talk about a schoolroom in a children's hospital. And so, being a former teacher, I pulled myself up over the back of the seat and I looked at them and I said, "A schoolroom in a children's hospital?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Tell me more about it." And they said, "Well, we don't really know that much about it." And I said, "Oh, okay." And then I just kind of slid down the seat again, and I can still feel my face on the vinyl seat as we're bumping along. But it planted a seed in my mind of when we moved to Atlanta, that was something I wanted to check into. So later, about the next year, we did move to Atlanta. John started working at Emory with cancer research, and one of the first calls I made was to Eggleston's Children's Hospital, which is now Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. I started volunteering in the schoolroom there and just enjoyed the teachers so much and the children and learned so much from them. And one day, one of the teachers said, "You know, normally we bring the children up here to the schoolroom, and we have a lot of children in this smaller room at this time, and we need somebody to be able to go down to the isolation floor on oncology, because the patients and the parents have to be there 24/7, and they're there for months at a time sometimes." So I went down to the floor, and I was always drawn to that floor anyway, I guess because of what John has done for so many years. And in 2002, my life would change. And I went and knocked on this door, 357, and this woman told me to come in, and I came in. And I told her who I was. I was from the schoolroom, and that I was there to help Danielle, her 7-year-old, with bedside tutoring if she felt like it. And so Danielle was not feeling well that day, but her mother welcomed me in and had me to sit down. And I looked over and I saw Hetty, the mom's well-worn Bible, on her chair. And we just clicked. And we started talking. And she was telling me about their journey here to Atlanta, and that they had come from Miami, Florida, and Danielle had ALL leukemia in the past, had gone into remission, and now it had come back. And so they were up here for a bone marrow transplant from one of the little sisters. And Hetty and I just clicked it off that first day. And so each week when I would come back to the schoolroom, I would also come down to her room and just talk for a while. Well, that just opened something in my heart, and I just realized that these parents were there for such long periods of time and so concerned about their very, very sick children. And I would like to do something extra for them. And I kept thinking about writing a devotional book or something like that, some words of encouragement, that somebody was coming alongside. And even though we haven't gone through these deep waters in our own family, I just felt so honored to be a part of these families. And so I was at a writer's conference, and I was talking to this man, and I was telling him about another book I was interested in, and he said, then I said, you know, but really what my heart book is for a book for families of children with cancer. And come to find out, he had had a great nephew who had passed away with cancer. And we just had a bond there. And so after I'd gotten home from the conference, I had emailed him and just thanked him for the time talking to me. And he asked me to send a proposal for that book. And that began a process. And I went to the Children's Hospital the next day, and I was in the schoolroom talking to the teachers, and I said, do you think this is at all possible to do something like this? And they said, well, you ought to try. And one of the teachers said, have you met Jonathan Ward? He's the chaplain on oncology. And I said, I think he's just one of the few I haven't met. So she introduced me to him, and that day we sat and talked. And I told him what my vision was for a book, and he said, you know, I've wanted to do this for 2 years. I have really thought about this. And his plate is totally full with taking care of patients and parents and staff there on oncology. And so we started working together and praying together. And this was 6 years ago. And we kept working on the book and just following God's lead, and a lot of doors were open and a lot were closed that were supposed to be. And over the time, it just started evolving. And so at one of the writers' conferences I was in Philadelphia, I met this couple, the Taylors from Pneuma Publishing. It's Pneuma. And you can hire them to do your editing and to do a cover for your book. And so they had just kind of stayed in my mind that I had met them several years ago. And so as I was writing this book and coming along with all of this, I knew I needed more professional help with it. And it looked like we were going to do self-publishing, because the niche is so small with children's cancer that larger publishers didn't want to take it on, and understandably so. But it was so needed. There's 12,000 new cases of children's cancer a year, and there's over 350,000 survivors of cancer, and some with some real heavy long-term problems from some of the chemo and radiation, and some don't have that. But there's a larger group than we realize, and as one father said, it doesn't seem important unless it's your child, and then it's important. And so I contacted Brian and Nina Taylor at Pneuma, and so I had sent them my book and the proposal and everything, and we clicked also. And Brian came up with the most fantastic cover. This was totally different from anything that I was going to do. And I looked at it the first time I saw it on the computer, and this beautiful hope just jumped out at me. And we have a daisy, and it's hope for families of children with cancer. And even on the back, we have daisies all the way through the book, and it looks so happy. So this started the You Are Not Alone book series. We may do 2 more for children with heart disease and children with chronic conditions, but this is the first one we wanted to get out. So not only did this start in Africa, but it also continued in another way. When we first moved to Atlanta in about 10 years ago, I developed a ministry with my friend Carolyn Swanner, and it was called Kindred Spirits International. And the 2 main ministries that we were interested in, the outreaches, were children's hospitals and also Amani Yaju, which means peace from above in Swahili. And this is a mission that a lady started about 13 years ago. And it's women who have come from such destitute situations from other countries and have ended up in Nairobi in the slums. And she taught them to make these beautiful products with purses and things like that. And then they do Bible studies and pray together. And they're so strong in the Lord. And so I've become involved with them. And so I asked them to make us a tote that would go with the book. And this is what they came up with. It's called a Tote of Hope. And we wanted the bright yellow to go with the book, with our bright yellow daisy here. And we could just put the book into the tote. And it has several different pockets, and then it has a pocket for water and everything on the side. But this is a tote that the parents can take the book and anything else they want to carry and go to and from and to and from and to and from the hospital, because that's their life. You go to clinic, you come home. You go for intake, you come home. You go back to clinic, you come home. And so this is a little tote of hope, a little bright yellow in their life, some sunshine. The main thing we are doing, though, is selling the book or giving it away. And we want to get it into the hands of the parents across the country that are affected by this. Another person who was led into my life at a writers' conference was Cease Murphy. And he is a wonderful writer. He was one of the writers for 90 Minutes in Heaven, which is a bestseller. And he has such a heart for new writers and for helping others. And I've gone to 2 of his conferences, of his mentoring conferences, and he helped me so much with the book. And we would just go over it and over it. He would tweak it and tweak it and tweak it. And so I thank him so much for his help with all of this. God has just brought all kinds of people into my life, and especially my husband, and his coming alongside and encouraging me with this. All of our friends and the people who prayed for this book over the years, and those who critiqued it, and those whose lives are going to be touched with it now. And we just pray that His Holy Spirit will just do the teaching and draw the people to them and encourage them. Thank you.